Hello and good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us again today for the COPEC Daily Financial Wellness Webcast. We've got a great program today with Kip Morse, the president of the BBB of Central Ohio. We'll have him join us here in a little bit, and we're going to be talking about trust, credibility, and leadership with a lot of the character ethics that they have going on in the community. So we're looking forward to that. A little bit of cleaning up here with some disclosure. First of all, from 2 o'clock to 2:30, we're going to have our program with our discussion with Kip. And then we'll close out at 2:30, but then we'll stay on for another half an hour for questions if you have any. So feel free to do that. In general, our host, myself, Jay Linder, I was actually one of the founders of COPEC and currently president, and happy to support the community in this role. And then also Jerry Snyder, also one of the founders. He will host from time to time as well. So looking forward to having him join us. Real quick, because of our common leadership, through retirement strategies, we need to go ahead and do a little disclosure here for you. And it has to do with the combination of COPEC, the nonprofit, retirement strategies, and other affiliated companies. I'm going to leave this on here for about a minute so everybody can take a look at that. And feel free that you can also go to the COPEC website at copeceducation.org, and there's full disclosure there as well. And a couple other notes to go through. Again, what is COPEC? Well, COPEC is the Central Ohio Professional Education Council. And what the goal is to provide community education without any cost to you or without any promotion of products or sales or things of that nature. The daily portal that we've created really is about the financial wellness initiative that we have in Central Ohio to bring a lot of different financial topics to you that many times people have questions on, concerns, not sure where to go to. And hopefully this is something that can support you in your education process and learning all these different areas and the tools and resources in the community. Programming, technology, it's undoubtedly going to happen. We might have a technology problem, a loss of signal or something. Just stay tuned. We'll try to get it up and running as soon as possible if that happens. You might have to re-log in, but hopefully we won't have that issue. And then again, like I mentioned, open Q&A from 2:30 to 3. We really want questions for Kip, but also anything in general. This is a good opportunity to really get that feedback. And then use the Q&A functionality. If you use the chat, that is not turned on for all attendees, but try to use the Q&A. And then just note, we are doing these programs every day from 2 to 3, 2 to 2:30, and then the Q&A till 3. Holidays, obviously, we won't be doing them on the holidays and probably the day after Thanksgiving, things like that. And share this with others. We appreciate you tuning in. Feel free to share it with others. This is open to anybody, and we appreciate you being here. And as you can see on the right side of the screen there, we have a lot of great speakers that are going to be coming in every day. And so if there's anybody that you're interested in hearing from, take a look at the calendar, and I'll show that here in a second. Real quick on the portal, if you go to copeceducation.org, we have the wellness portal, and you'll see these 6 tiles. The first tile is what we're dealing with today, and if you click on that, not only is there a link to get into the program, but there's the upcoming schedule of calendars, so you can take a look which speakers and what topics on which days. If you want to put that on your calendar to bring it up, and maybe there's a certain one you want to hear. Here's an example of the calendar. And so you can see today, the 5th of August, we have Kip joining us, and then take a look at all the different other things that we'll be reviewing. Also, we have a retirement decisions program. These are programs that we do a couple times a year, and it's really a retirement readiness preparation for people to make sure that when you make that big change, that there's a some dialogue as far as what you need to consider and look for. And then the other one is Financial Wellness Fridays. Every Friday we'll have a 1 hour long lecture series from different people doing different topics. And so tune into those and see what's available, and you can share those as well. If you're a department at a organization, university, or a company, and you want to have one of our speakers come in and speak to your group, either in person, obviously right now that's difficult, but webinar based, feel free to fill out that form. Let us know what you're interested in. It will help set you up with a special program for your group, and we're happy to do that at any time. And if you have a question that you can't do in a group setting like this, feel free to set up a consultation discussion, or send us an email. We'll make sure we point you in the right direction, regardless of what that is. So let's go ahead and get this going here. And again, today we're talking about trust, credibility, and leadership. And Kip, I'm really looking forward to hearing what you guys have been up to regarding this whole area of trust and leadership. And this really has a lot to do with the financial world. I know there's a lot of issues going on out there with fraud and things that people need to be careful on. What have you been finding really in this whole trust, credibility, leadership that you've been really putting the initiative on that people can learn a little bit about?
Well, I think it's, there's, like you said, it's a full spectrum. I mean, you've got everything from during the pandemic, all of a sudden, I spent the first 6 weeks, the media was calling about all the scams and everything that was taking place, which is typical in any kind of a, whether we get a hurricane or any kind of catastrophe that takes place, scammers are going to take advantage of that. And so they're going to really harp on the vulnerabilities of individuals that are in a position of uncomfort, concern, and they're looking for help. I mean, that's why COPEC is so great, because you, like you said, you've got vetted professionals that can be there and help educate and communicate. Scammers are coming in and they're trying to work on your nervousness. And so we've always got that end of the BB that we're working on, but we spend a lot more time on the other end, and that is, how do you become a better business, and how do you become a better leader, and what does that look like in our community? And so I've got a lot of different things to talk about today relative to, during these periods where your life has been turned upside down, what are some of the things you can focus on so that when we come out of this, in whatever way, shape, or form that we do come out of this, how are you going to be able to look back and say, I used this as an opportunity. I had a little bit more time to do this. I could focus on this area, but you came out of it in a better position than when you went into it. So.
Are you finding, and if you could expand on this a little bit, yesterday we had a great program with Lori, and it had to do with a lot of seniors, and they're staying at home. And like you said, not only is that already a naturally vulnerable population, but whenever there's a crisis like this, they're almost looking for either answers, or they're looking for companionship even. I don't know, maybe you can comment on that a little bit, where they're lonely and they're looking for anything, and that opens the door dramatically, and they trust maybe too much or too little, and how do they verify? And maybe you're caring for a parent. How do you help them watch out for these types of things?
Well, I mean, a couple quick stories. I remember we were working with an elderly individual that had been falling for some scams. We knew that she was going to give about a $10,000 check to a courier. And so we rushed out there with the sheriff's office. We had conversations with her. She finally came to grips with the fact that the $40,000 in debt that she was on her credit card was all scam related. And then we said, you're not going to answer the phone, right? You're not going to be talking to this person anymore. And she said, well, she goes, I won't give him any more money, but can I still answer the phone and talk to him? I mean, they've called 3 times without asking for anything, and they figured out what medications they're on. They know when to call to remind them. So that's all about this trust. They're trying to build the trust and the credibility. And then that individual is looking forward to that phone call. And then the next thing you know, they're asking for, some money up front, and then they send them something randomly and they feel like they've received something, they've won something. And so they fall for this trap. And then the other scenario is, we always encourage people that if you're caring for anybody that's like still living in their home, be very careful of what they're getting in their mailbox. If you see them getting, every day they're getting 4 things relative to sweepstakes, then they've signed up for something and they're on one of those lists. And once they're on one of those lists, those are bought and sold, and that can become related to not just mail, but to their getting email scams, getting phone scams, and they're all based on the same thing, is building trust and or scaring them into thinking they need to do something that they wouldn't normally do.
That's a really interesting thought. I never thought about it that way, in that the scammers are building the trust just like our good, reputable companies are building trust. Hence the difference of ethics and credibility and all the different things that you really want to put behind a good company. But scams are so successful because the consumer does not know the right way to trust who, and what is the differentiation that they need to naturally do on their own. Hence, like you said right there, is people that care for seniors. And I know we're talking a little bit about seniors, and correct me if I'm wrong, seniors aren't the only ones being taken by a lot of these scams. But the idea that we're differentiating, they know how to tap into that trust factor without the ethics and credibility. How do we get the companies and the awareness to the community to differentiate the two? I think is a really important concept.
Well, I mean, again, during the pandemic, the numbers of people coming to our website, the BAB in Central Ohio, has skyrocketed. We're up over 120,000 people that have come to the site more than the previous year this time. And so what they're doing is they are doing what we're asking them to do. They're asking to evaluate and check out offers and businesses ahead of time. A couple different things take place. We've got a scam tracker, the BAB scam tracker. You can go to that online. And if you feel like you've been scammed, you can put in a keyword. You can say, IRS, and you'll see all the people that have put in either that they've fallen for the IRS scam or they didn't fall for it, but they reported it on the scam tracker. That gives us the information that we can provide to people, and they can read through those scams, and you can say, Worthington's been hit by this scam this many times because it's a heat map. And then we can do the evaluating on the back end, provide all of that data to law enforcement, whether it's the FBI, the FTC, whoever it might be, the IRS, that needs to have that information so that they can see to what scale these scammers are acting in our community. And it's critical because, again, on the other side, what you're talking about in terms of, okay, I'm a legitimate company, I get it. Well, one, you have to be on the alert for all the business scams on that end, but also then you have to understand, how as a business do I actually build trust within the community? How do I reach the point where I've reached marketplace trust? And marketplace trust kind of means that you can get there and you can still make a mistake, but you've built the credibility up to the point where they will still understand that you've made a mistake and you've been transparent. We see that a lot with businesses. That's a little bit harder because that gets into, what I was referring to when I say, look back on this pandemic and say, I've done the things that I need to do, that I needed to do so that I'm in a better place. One of those is taking a look at your organization and understanding that, that to get to that marketplace trust, first you need to look at the leadership, your leadership, your company's leadership. Are you doing the right things? We've got all sorts of frameworks that we can help you along those lines. But then once you get past the leadership, what about your culture, your team? Are you uniting your team around that leadership? Are you steering performance around that? Are you treasuring the people within your organization? If they don't feel treasured, they're not going to communicate that at the next level to the customers and vendors, because they don't even feel treasured. So why would they then treasure their customers? You can find that out. We developed a B2B trust score that actually, you send a survey to your employees. We ask some questions all based on all the principles of a trustful organization, and they'll tell you. Your employees will tell you. You don't even have to ask your customers yet. And and then you get into the whole customer side, and then you get into the community. How, as an organization, are you seeing the needs of our community right now, and how are you stepping up to provide assistance? And not everybody can do that. Some people are, they're scratching just to save their business or just to make ends meet. But in terms of a comprehensive look at your business, that's one of the components of building trust in the community.
The idea that it's almost like if there's a vacuum, if there's a lack of community businesses that have the credibility and trust of the consumer, if there's a lack there, it's going to be filled by somebody. Hence the people that feel that communication or that thought of trust versus the reality, which is they know you can sniff out fraud or whatever a little bit better if you know what the real stuff looks like. When it comes to credibility, what's maybe a process of that in the community? I mean, I know it can't be created within a week, right? I mean, you got to work at this.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's one of those things that that we always use the term intentional. You have to be very intentional about everything that you're doing within your organization over time, and then be able to look back. I can see that before the pandemic, we did a lot of work in the entrepreneurial startup community, assisting businesses in the early stages. And then you realize that you might have done 2 years of work that both educates yourself, but it also builds those bonds of trust. And you may look back and say, I don't know if I actually accomplished anything by that. And then all of a sudden the pandemic hits, and what happens? All those people are contacting you for assistance, and you realize, geez, I just built credibility over the course of 2 years, and now they're coming to me. I didn't necessarily do it because I was, we wanted to get something out of it specifically. It was more because it was the right thing to do. But usually, if it's the right thing to do, it will also help your bottom line. Because a lot of times I have businesses say, okay, get to the point. How's this going to help my bottom line? They don't want to hear that it's the right thing to do. Well, they're usually married to one another. And if you do the hard work and put the time in to take the steps to build trust in these different areas that we talked about, then it'll come back to you, tenfold. And so I think that, this is a good time to refocus yourself and to evaluate, where are you on that spectrum? If you think that if you think that this has put your company or your personal leadership in disarray, then focus on that. And be, when we get into November and December, you can look back and say, okay, I've taken a bunch of steps forward, and I think I'm in a much better position. Otherwise, you're going to continue to decline. If you don't figure out that there's things that you can do and you need to do to start climbing back up, it's going to force you into all sorts of anxiety and problems down the road.
If you're a consumer and you are getting some of this information, what are some things, resources that you can look into to get a good idea as to whether whether the organization that you're being contacted by that seems attractive to maybe a need you've been wanting. Let's just say, out of the blue, you start getting called on by a roofer or something like that, and you've been wanting to look at that anyway. Maybe you appreciate the fact that they're out there and they're trying to find new clients, and you build that relationship. But what are some processes that we can go through to verify that they've gone through some of the things that you should be able to trust them and you can feel comfortable moving to the next step?
Yeah, the real basic one is go to bbb.org and put in the company name. And if it's a roofer, we have a report on them. If we don't, there's probably a problem that we need to address, because we get those types of inquiries regularly. And if we do, we build a profile on those companies. And then what we do is we evaluate them based on standards. So we evaluate based on, are they properly licensed? What does their advertising look like? Are they making claims on their website that they can't back up? What kind of associations are they a part of? And then we build out this profile. And the really cool project that we're working on now is that consumers, more and more, they want to know all of that information is almost like baseline. And what they want to know is where does this company stand relative to their support for the community? Do they stand for Black Lives Matter? Do they stand for clean energy? What is their impact in the community? And they want to know that information. So we're building that out in the profile so that the consumers that are getting more savvy about who they want to do business with will have that data. So we're doing a lot of data collection around that area. And then the variation between having a profile and then being accredited by the BAB is that we've then asked these companies, based on their investment on an annual basis, to say that they're committed to our principles. So that means that if you do get a dispute, which is going to happen, we've got a direct line. They have committed to responding to those complaints and taking care of them. And so we hear a lot of times people say, geez, I worked for like 6 weeks to try to get this complaint resolved. I sent it to the Better Business Bureau and it was fixed in a week. Well, that's because the next morning we had a direct line to the person that handles all the complaints with the Better Business Bureau. And right now complaints are off the chart. We're up 1,500 complaints over this time last year. It's kind of, we're trying to make your life easier as a consumer so that you don't have to look at 10 things on the internet and not know which 8 of them to trust or which 8 not to trust. Come to the BBB and we can give you that information, and you can call us up and tell us exactly what you're dealing with. And every one of our employees are accessible still during the pandemic.
Talk a little bit about leadership. When we're talking about trust and credibility, and if you're a consumer in the community, what are you looking for on the leadership term, that concept? Because I know you talk a lot about that with companies that really, like you said, stand out. They have extra details about them that the consumer might want to know about. And maybe talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I'll pop up a couple different screen shares here. This idea of, leadership really starts with character, and it really we have at the BUB Center for Character Ethics.org, we have different frameworks. We've got a leadership character framework, and basically it's an opportunity for you to take a look at different aspects relative to honesty, transparency, being respectful, different areas of character that we try to promote this idea of hire for character, not for competency. There's a lot of articles out there right now about that, how critical that is. You can train competency, you can train individuals, but if you look back, 99% of the time you had to let somebody go because of a character issue. It wasn't competency. And so we give you different tools to focus on developing high character leaders. Then we talked a little bit about the culture, customers, and the community. But what I really wanted to share with you here is this diagram that it has to start with leadership. It's at the core, and so you really have to focus on the leadership within your company. And then it goes to the employees. Then once you get the employees involved, you have increased creativity, low turnover, ethical practices, positive relationships, productivity. Those things start to flourish because you've got your employees as a part of this whole movement. Then you get into the customer vendor trust. If you've reached your employees and they are just spewing that to your customers, then you start getting referrals, committed partners, supportive vendors, satisfied customers, repeat business, all the things that you are trying to strive for. But if you don't focus on your leadership or your employees, you're not going to get there, and you're going to be frustrated. And then we mentioned the marketplace trust, superior reputation, business growth, new customers, great performance, forgiveness for mistakes. I mean, this is what we're trying to get businesses to understand, is the hard work from the core and building that out so that they can be celebrating these superior reputation moving forward. And we use this model a lot. We use it in a lot of our trainings. We use it to make sure that people understand that when they go through a workshop and they say, well, how do I deal with this person on this staff? Well, first you deal with yourself.
Right.
Before you can deal with the culture, you have to deal with the leadership. And so we talk about leadership before anything else.
Yeah, and I think when we talk about consumers purchasing services and things like that, the idea of a reputable company, how they treat their employees, how they serve their community. Sometimes it's tough for people to really dig into that. And I like the fact that you guys provide a little insight in that, because you're not only a catalyst, but a reservoir of information for people to utilize. And so take advantage of that type of resource. And a lot of times, when we go back to the roofer idea, the people that shows up and, knocks on your door and says, hey, by the way, do you need that tree trimmed, or do you need whatever it is, doesn't mean that's not a good opportunity, but you need to take a look at the balance between this is a low cost, can get them in, but I had a bad experience once where I had somebody who was willing to, they did a neighbor's driveway. So I said, okay, that's fine. And I had him do my driveway, but it was I don't know if it was fly by night or whatever, but it was one guy, and he ended up doing a horrible job. And I had to go to another company who I found to be reputable to fix the whole darn project, because I wanted to save $1, or it was a convenient answer to what I had going through my mind. So I'm sure, we talk a lot in our business that, by the time somebody reaches probably 50 or 60 years old, they've got 3, 4, 5 of those experiences, hopefully small, like a driveway, and not something big like thousands of dollars being scammed. But you want to use those, internalize those, and have a real effect. And having a resource like yours is real important to utilize to minimize that impact, I'd imagine.
Yeah, I think, it's key. I mean, we put a lot of time and energy into that database and holding businesses to a certain standard. And let's be clear, there's the vast majority of businesses are doing wonderful work, and they meet high standards. And so we want to make sure that the level playing ground is for all of them, and that the rest of the businesses that are either more in the realm of scams or aren't properly licensed, aren't getting the business.
Well, Kip, this has been a great conversation. You know, we're going to go ahead and we're going to go ahead and close this out here. I'm going to take over the screen here, make sure everybody can see your information, and feel free to reach out to Kip and his organization directly. If you have any questions, concerns, go to their website. Kip, I know we're going to have you on from time to time, and so we're excited about having you back. So I want to thank everybody for joining us. And what we're going to do is we're going to actually go and close this out here, but we're going to stay around for about as long as there's questions, if anybody has any. So feel free to chime in, and thank you very much for attending. And Kip, thanks for joining us today. We really appreciate it.
Thanks, Jay. Appreciate it. Yeah, you can always reach out to me.